Discuss the U.S. Justice Department joining the lawsuit against Lance Armstrong is Layth Gafoor, Principal and Managing Director of Lucentum Sports and Entertainment Law. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me, Marcia.
Can you explain, first of all, how the Justice Department got involved in all this mess?
Well, it's interesting to consider. You know that Armstrong himself did not cooperate with the investigation. He was defiant until the very end, and I can't help but consider that part of this has to do with the fact that this major scandal broke. Armstrong was right in the middle of that, and without his cooperation, not much has changed since then.
All right, so his lawyer is calling these charges opportunistic and insincere. I'm wondering, that takes a lot of gumption to say that, but how strong is their defense when Lance Armstrong has since admitted to being guilty of doping?
Well, there's two things to consider. Firstly, when they make the statement, when Mr. Armstrong's counsel makes a statement, he's pointing to Mr. Landis. He's saying partly that this is an opportunity that Mr. Landis has under the whistleblower legislation to be able to get some money out of that. And part of that legislation permits that whistleblower, in respect to the risk that they take and holding themselves out for public scrutiny, to recover anything from 15 to 25% of the overall recoveries of the federal government.
So this is about his former teammate, is
Partly is, absolutely. The government itself, I think it plays back to what I'd mentioned earlier, that part of it has to do with the fact that this scandal broke. It tore the entire sport apart, and Armstrong, even to this date, is refusing to cooperate with the investigation. It's sad in the sense that a lot of the great work that Livestrong has done and is doing in the community, this could have had a very different outcome.
Indeed. All right, so what does the government now have to prove?
Well, the government's alleging that partly that when they entered into the contract with the team, that they were required to follow the rules of cycling, and that by Armstrong now admitting, as he did earlier this year, that he knowingly doped, he broke that part of the contract, he breached that contract. But secondarily, that by covering it up, not just him, but the individuals that were associated with himself, as well as his company, they committed the fraud. Right. The one challenge they're going to have is that by their own documents, by their own internal investigation, it's showing that they received upwards of a minimum of $139 million in worldwide exposure as a result of being affiliated with Lance and the team. So that creates a challenge, and definitely not a slam dunk argument.
How do you expect this to play out?
By all estimates, typically these cases settle. So I would expect that in the months ahead that there will be some discussion. A lot of the information right now is under seal. So what that means is that the two parties, that's Mr. Landis now has his counsel, but the weight of the U.S. Justice Department to assist him, there will be the negotiations on the back end. Likely it will settle, but at least it sets the bar. And as I mentioned earlier, that legislation allows that on the final determination, triple the amount of those damages be recovered. So I think Armstrong now has a position where there may be some negotiation going on.
Layth Gafoor, thank you so much for being with us and explaining all of this to us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.